you for choosing us. My name is Kojo Yankson. Now, the nation needs a rethink. It's a position almost all Ghanaians agree with. The country is not progressing as it should, no matter who leads us. As we told you yesterday, the Church of Pentecost is taking steps to help address this. Yesterday, they assembled the country's most powerful people to discuss solutions to our problems, and they wrapped it all up today. We're going to take you live to the location and hear from some of the speakers shortly. Plus, we'll bring you some analysis of what has been shared there. But first, let's go along to the Pentecost Convention Center in Gumwa-Fete in the Central Region. My colleague Carlos Caloni is there. Carlos, before we actually go to Carlos, let's hear a wrap of some of the thoughts that were shared at this event.
I think for the first time on a platform, you have NDC, MPP, and all people from all walks of life, not talking about partisan interests, but what could bind us together and a vision for the future. It's both symbolically important, and what will come out of it, how can you predict what will come out of it at the beginning? I believe that there is hope for Ghana if we decide to work together. And I think that what this conference is about, if I get it right, is that first of all, we must learn to sing from the same hymn book with a national vision. And that the planners of the Constitution set up the National Development Planning Commission for that. Hitherto, our politicians have focused on their party agenda. And I think that there's a need to change that focus, and that's what we are here for. And I believe that 1,000 miles starts somewhere. This should be the beginning. But by itself, the gathering will not achieve much. It's what we do after. And I hope that with the Church of Pentecost, which at the moment has 1 in every 10 Ghanaians is a Church of Pentecost member, can start a movement which will be positive and will bind us together.
I think that this is an opportune time. We are going to have elections, and we need, for me, a pep talk that we need to think about the future of this nation. Whoever wants to rule this nation must think about probity and accountability, must think about how to overcome corruption. We cannot do things normally. We are not in normal times. And for me, for the Church of Pentecost to organize this and bring, if you like, all the movers and shakers together, it is my prayer that because the heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord, God will turn our hearts around, that we will do things differently. We will not turn a blind eye to things that are happening, but we will help the right and fight the wrong.
The idea of bringing people across board to engage in this kind of conference for me is an incredible kind of innovation, but particularly even the idea of the moral vision for the nation for me is something that is so innovative and very remarkable. It appears to me so much of reflection has gone into our current moral situation, and that has led to the crafting of this kind of very, what I describe as revolutionary kind of vision to assist us to be able to reclaim our integrity as a nation. But if you look at the wonderful array of people who have come to participate, from the top to the low, it's very impressive. It's assisting unity. I've seen former President Kufuor, former President John Dramani Mahama. Seen them taking picture together with the current Vice President. All of them, from the presentation they made, sharing concern. I've been acknowledging that something is wrong with our moral state.
Being beneficial is an understatement. It's very, very, very important. And I congratulate the church. I commend the church for this kind of program. I pray that other churches will follow suit. Now, like the speakers just alluded to, morality. It's the nation. People without morals, you can see what will happen in the country, you know. So it's everything. Morality from the moral fabric of the nation, and it is that will impact on what we do, will impact on our children and the next generation, like the speakers all alluded to. So this program is very, very important. In fact, it's the first time, I don't know whether, and I'm thinking, they say it's the first time they organize this thing. I pray it's organized on a yearly basis.
It is very insightful. In fact, this is what we actually need. If we would have to move forward, the character, the moral fiber of the people must change.
Yeah. All right. Now let's go live to the venue and speak to our very own Carlos Caloni, who has been there from the very beginning. Carlos, so as we understand it, it's all come to an end. Why don't you bring us up to date on how things wrapped up today?
All right, so Kojo, like you rightly said, the National Development Conference has come to a successful end. The conference started yesterday, and a lot of big wigs actually came through. We had about 5,000 plus participants actually taking part in this particular conference. And the conference highlighted on a number of things, including the decaying morals of the country, out of which a 10-point communique or recommendations have been given. And so basically that's what the conference has been about. There's been a call for establishment of an integrity council to ensure that these recommendations are actually practicalized so we can reap the full benefit of the conference. But I have with me some participants here to share with us what they make of today's outcomes, especially from yesterday to today. So can you give us your name and tell us what you make of the two-day conference?
Okay, so my name is Stephen Kofi Beidu, NDC parliamentary candidate for Asan South constituency. I think this conference has been very, very beneficial, looking at the state in which the country is in terms of our political, social, and the moral decay that we find ourselves. One thing we can all mention is the corruption in the system. So the idea of this conference is to try and bring to the forefront the need for morality and ethics in what we do, not just Christian values, but morality and ethics. And that is what this conference tried to portray.
All right. Hold on, let me come to you. What's your name and what are some of the highlights for you?
Thank you very much. My name is Carl Ni Ado. I'm coming from the Excellent Ghana Forum, which is a civil society organization, and also the parliamentary candidate for aspirant for Bokatamanso constituency. For me, my take out is the fact that we hope to encourage the idea of Operation Feed Yourselves amongst the Ghanaian populace. I am also very enthused on the issue of the National Integrity Council. Indeed, many at times we have been able to protect our cultural values, and coming on the back of some legislation such as the Proper Family Rights Bill. I am so excited. This is commendable. I salute and doff my hat out to the apostle of the chairman of the Church of Pentecost, Apostle Nyamiche, and the entire team. With this is been long in coming, and we hope that it is not just going to be in 2023, but it will be repeated every year. Again, I also saw the wonderful harmony between our former presidents yesterday and the cooperation between the two major parties and their stakeholders yesterday. It was, in all, it's just been wonderful.
All right, so let's talk about the recommendation. 10 recommendations given. Which of these recommendations do you think should be the number one for you? And do you think that recommendation will lead to the transformation of the moral fabric that we have as a people?
Indeed, first of all, I would want to put our own bit as Excellent Ghana Forum in the integrity campaign. An integrity campaign, a nationwide campaign to improve and promote the moral alertness of our citizenry. Indeed, I appreciate the fact that in the school curriculum, the religious and moral education subject is helping on that. But once there is a deliberate, a purposive approach towards improving or increasing the moral fiber of the society, that's good. So that should come number first. That's the integrity campaign. Secondly, the council.
All right, hold on. Let me come to my gentleman. For you, which of these 10 recommendations should stand tall?
I think the council is it encompasses all the other 9 that we are talking about. So that is like the vehicle in which all the other recommendations can actually be implemented. So if we're able to actually get the council to actually work, I think that's fantastic. So we are hoping that that will work. But you know, for the Church of Pentecost, one of our core our values for the theme has been possessing the nations for Christ. And this is in line. You see, as Christians, it's not just about preaching the word of God itself, but it's about impacting lives in a positive way. So if you remember, some years ago, we even built some prisons for the nation. So that is what the church is about. And this conference falls in line with the values and vision of the church.
All right, so going forward, what would you want to see within what time frame in terms of implementation of these recommendations?
I would be very happy if this year we actually see implementation and lobbying going on, because this has to be approved by Parliament and all the other stakeholders for it to become to be implemented. But I can say, if I, Stephen Kofi Bedi, goes into Parliament, this is going to be one of the first things that I'm going to push, because morality is important. One of the things that we learned here is that now, because morality has gone down, we're actually training intelligent thieves. Because now all these guys are learning how to use the computer to change figures and stuff like that. So where there's no ethic, there is if there's nothing to click your mind that what I'm doing is wrong, Charlie, it's very serious. Okay. So we want a nation that is full of people who fear God, at the same time love the country in which we are, and are willing to do work voluntarily to support and help the country move forward.
All right, thank you so much. The final question to you. Now, looking at these recommendations given, some would argue that we usually would have some of these things, recommendations given at the end of each conference, and we go to sleep. For you, what are the practical steps that you expect the authorities, parliament, and all those institutions, what do you expect them to put into action so we can actually reap the full benefit of these recommendations?
Oh, thank you very much. Indeed, His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in the short while will be launching the repackaged phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs program. And I wish and I expect actually that it will be the idea of growing food as in our backyards. I mean, the Operation Feed Yourself will be inculcated or incorporated into the second phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs. That I think we can quickly do whilst we do go through the normal process to institutionalize the Morality and Integrity Council.
All right, both of you are politicians, and usually it is the politicians who are supposed to actualize some of these recommendations. And so I'm going to ask you, what will be your word to the political leaders of the country? I'll ask you and then I'll come back to you.
I would say, I think it's clear. My special greetings to John Mahama, my president, wherever you are, and all the executives of the party. NDC, we've always been people-centered. Our focus has always been how can we make the people at the bottom, at the grassroots, have a comfortable living. And this is something that we as a party, we are very passionate about. And we can promise that if NDC 2024, 2025, we are in power, we will work with the church and other stakeholders to ensure that morality is important. The evidence is clear to see where there's no morality, there's no ethics, greed and corruption is what we see. And we are hoping that we in power will change that for Ghana.
All right. What will be your word to the political leadership of the country and the traditional leadership?
There is a new breed of politicians coming up, and in just a simple language, I already commend His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, my own mother, the Chief of Staff, Mama Frema, because I know that when you consider even the harmonious and tolerant way this government has been able to hold the fort for the past 7 years, I hold no doubt, not even a shred, that we are going to work towards implementing these 10 communique points cooperatively.
All right, thank you. So I have on my right an MPP person and on my left an NDC person. They are assuring us that they are committed to these recommendations. But earlier, I have been speaking to the chairman of the implementation committee, Justice Che Bafo. So we'll take a little break and come back to listen to what he has been saying.
Right, so that's exactly what we're going to do right now. We're going to hear that earlier conversation that Carlos had. And of course, it's going to shed even more light on the aspirations of this well-meaning group that intends to have a rethink of how we do things here in Ghana. A 10-point communique being the guideline for that rethink and the implementation of whatever change is required. You've heard from both representatives of both political parties who seem committed to doing things differently, and we'll certainly see whether indeed that commitment can be followed through to fruition. If we're ready now, I think we can have a look at that all-important conversation that Carlos had earlier in the day.
So we are currently here at the Pentecost Convention Center, where I'm privileged to speak to the chairman of the Moral Vision Implementation Committee Chair.
That's correct.
All right, so please, can you give us your full name?
My name is Justice Eric Chebafo.
And you are the?
I'm the chair of the committee that had been put up in terms of implementing the communique that had come out, and even fashioning the communique that had come out of this two-day conference, and then also how we strategize to follow up in terms of its implementation.
All right, so share with us what informed these 10 recommendations and how are you going to implement it effectively?
Okay. You could see, if you were here starting yesterday, there were various speakers. And so the recommendations first came out of what the various speakers, in terms of their presentation, put out. Beyond the presentations, we also had group discussions where we created a platform so that for each group, when their discussions were done, they had to submit it to us. We created a Google platform, and so last night we had to meet and then peruse through the various discussions, the recommendations, and together with the presentations, encapsulated what came out of this conference, which now represent the 10 recommendations.
Let's look at implementation, whether these particular recommendations are not just going to be sitting on the shelves. What practical steps are you going to take to ensure that we fully benefit from these 2 days that we spent here?
You could see in terms of the recommendations and what we observed, our focus was not necessarily on political leadership. And I think as a nation, we have overblown and overemphasized the role of political leadership. And every nation, just like Ghana, the leadership of the country is a reflection of its people. When you have a people whose hearts are touched and are doing the right thing, ultimately, you will have that kind of leadership. But when you have a people who probably are depraved, it's more likely that the kind of leaders that you have will be a reflection of who they are. And so the strategy will be to begin engagement with all the necessary stakeholders, not necessarily the political class. We'll be dealing with the religious groups, traditional authorities. We'll be engaging in terms of education of the public with the National Commission for Civic Education, who were here and have been of great assistance to us, and all the institutions, civil organizations. We're taking it from there. But the first step is after this communique to come up with that plan or strategy, and that will be a reflection of the report that will come out with. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to us. So that's Eric Chebafo, the chairperson for the implementation committee of the communique that has been issued a while ago. So reporting from the Pentecost Convention Center here in Gomua, Fete in the central region, my name is Carlos Kaloni for Joy News.
Thank you, Carlos. All right, now let's have this, okay? We're joined by... You're welcome back. Now, of course, on the day when the National Council that was organized by the Pentecost Church, the Church of Pentecost, comes to an end, National Development Council, let's have a conversation. Let's try and figure out what impact this event can have on the future of our country. We're joined by a former presidential candidate on the ticket of the CPP, Dr. Abu Sakara Foster. He's been part of a movement to cause change in Ghana. He calls it the National Interest Movement. We've also got with us Raymond Ablo, who is a communication specialist and a thought leader in the political space. He's a journalist as well, and he's been speaking extensively about what is wrong with Ghana. Now, before we connect with them, though, let's listen to the views expressed yesterday at the conference. Chairman of the Church of Pentecost, Apostle Dr. Eric Nyamiche, set things off with this.
Why is she coming into these matters? Many reasons, many reasons. But I will limit myself to three. The purpose of the church is the transformation of this flag, the flag of Ghana. This flag, every flag, please let me have it. Yeah, this one. That is the purpose of the church. That is why we are salt and we are the lights of the world. If it doesn't shine in the darkness, then you can't call it light. The purpose of the church is the transformation of this flag. Number two, history invites us to join in the conversation of national development. Number three, righteousness exalts a nation.
Right. Other speakers made some very interesting points. We can start with former President J.A. Kufuor, who had this to say.
And we are all here to consider how we deliberate on the development of our nation using moral vision. And as I've said, you don't talk morality without talking humanity. So Pentecostal Church has done well in organizing this huge meeting, and I'm sure the meeting is also being relayed across the nation. I wish you success. So over the next 2 or 3 days of the forum, you come up with ways and means to enable the people generally to contribute to find the way forward towards developing our nation without the biases and, if you like, the unkindness that we tend to display to each other, even as we try to develop our country.
Former President Kufuor there. Now, he wasn't the only former president in attendance. John Dramani Mahama, former president of the Republic of Ghana, also had a few thoughts to share.
Happened to our value of being each other's keeper, each his brother's keeper, where communal assistance to each other on our farms and in other tasks that we had to undertake were easily available. What happened to our abhorrence of greed and theft? Why do we celebrate persons who today are wealthy with dubious sources of income, and yet society is not concerned about what the source of income is, and it's only about the person's wealth? Ladies and gentlemen, ethics have a direct impact on national development. And as a student of history, I can say unequivocally that in history, all civilizations that have fallen have done so after they lost their moral and ethical compass. It is our prayer that Ghana continues to maintain its moral compass in order that we can continue to ensure national development, prosperity, and dignity for our people.
Then it was the turn of Ghana's first ever minority Speaker of Parliament, Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin. He had this to say.
Good character builds trust. Without trust, people will never follow you. And without followers, obviously, one cannot lead. It will be a walk in the park. Therefore, effective leadership requires integrity. As leaders, particularly political leaders, we must be willing to be held accountable for our actions and inactions. We must conduct ourselves in a manner that is beyond the behavior of Pompey's wife, that is, beyond reproach. And we must uphold the highest standards of ethics and morality.
Right. Okay. So let's have a conversation about it. We're joined via Zoom by the former presidential candidate on the ticket of the CPP, Dr. Abu Sakara Foster. Also joining us is Raymond Ablo. He's a communications specialist, a thought leader in the political space, a journalist who has been writing extensively, about what is wrong with Ghana. Mr. Ablo and Mr. Foster, thank you both for your time and good afternoon. Right, if you can unmute your microphones for us so we can hear your voices and get the conversation underway. Right, so do we have Dr. Foster and Mr. Ablo? Okay, so if you can hear me, well, thank you for joining us. I'll start with you, Dr. Foster. Now, we've heard from some very illustrious Ghanaians. They all seem to think that Ghana is in need of a rethink. Where do you stand on this?
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we did not hear any of those interviews because you had a technical problem. But we're well aware of the subject matter because we ourselves have been in that mine for a long time. And we must indeed congratulate the Church of Pentecost for convening this forum to bring together different stakeholders to talk specifically about a rethink. And we have said that we need to redefine our democracy so that it works in our context and it works for everybody and not just a few. And in doing this, in the national interest movement, we've gone ahead to identify key things that we need to do. And a forum such as this has begun to touch on some of them regarding bringing together the stakeholders, looking at the electoral process, and also ensuring that the partisan approach does not subsume the national interest. And therein lies our principal problem, because from that derives all the other issues. When you have a national interest being subsumed by a parochial partisan interest, of course, issues of morality are going to turn up. Of course, breaches of constitution are going to turn up. Of course, we will not be adhering to principles. Of course, our budget expenditure will take on a different nature and a different tone. Of course, there will be corruption. And that is what we have seen throughout this entire period of the Fourth Republic, that the things that we want to get better seem to get worse. The good things that we want to do don't happen in such measure, but the bad things that we want to stop seem to increase from one administration to the other. And it's good that people are putting a finger on it and really pointing to the issue of morality, etc. I see it as a value system because in a democracy,
Right. We're going to reconnect there with Dr. Foster. But Raymond Abloh joins us. Raymond, what do you think of the voices through which these calls for change are coming? These are our current and previous leaders. If they knew that we needed these changes, why have they not been implemented?
That's precisely what I'm telling you, that the elephant in the room is the adversarial multi-party democratic system we've adopted, which decides to go beyond any means possible to win power and preserve power. And therein lies the breaches of the law, therein lies the excesses, therein lies the unfairness in the system and subsuming the national interest. And when that happens, you have to stand back and say, let's look at the system again. After all, this democratic system was taken up by us, and we can look at it and reconfigure it in the context in which the values that we cherish as a society are paramount, and not the intentions and interests of partisan groups. We have to look at the principles that underpin, our Constitution and ensure that they're translated properly into practice and not just into promises that fade away in the midday sun. So these are the areas where I think we need to look at. And even when it comes to the system of governance and its impact on the economy, we talk about the economy all the time as if it's in isolation. The economy does not exist in isolation. The kind of government you have, its intent and its purposefulness to achieve a certain goal determines the kind of economy and the management of that economy that you're going to have. And embedded in that is the fairness amongst people and between peoples. And when we have a system that is so driven by partisanship and maintaining power at all costs, see no wrong in anything done, of course, you are going to have a system in which you begin to question morality, because what people see others doing at the top, they also repeat at the bottom. So we cannot run away from the fact that this is not just about moral Christian values and in church. This is about the democracy itself and the kind of democracy we practice and the kind of things that that democracy itself generates. And until we stop and ask hard questions about whether this kind of democracy is suited for us, will a consensus-seeking democracy not be better than an adversarial one where, we contest, I win, and once I win, I have all the power, winner takes all, wait till the next 4 years before you talk. We have to ask those questions. We have to ask the question about why our traditional systems and traditional authorities are so delinked from it. They have no influence. The politicians are playing them. They are not playing the politicians. So when they need votes, they go to them and ask for the votes. And once they've got the votes, they can come back and do as they wish. What can we integrate the traditional authorities in a way which reflects them as modern institutions in the 21st Republic, not feudal institutions? And before we can integrate them fully, we also have to recognize that we're in the 21st century and the traditional systems themselves must modify themselves so that they recognize that we are dealing with citizens and we're not fiefdoms dealing with serfs. So that again is something that we can realign or reform and realign so that it works better with our formal system of governance. But in all of this, the bottom line basically is that, look, what people see, they will do. If you tell your children one thing and you do another thing, then of course they will do what they see. And therein lies our problem. If our democracy, by the very nature of its very adversarial nature, is demanding that we have hordes and hordes of money to win elections, it's going to lead to inappropriate practices, because where do you get those hordes of money from? And how do you recoup those hordes of money back? And then people who have something to say, a contribution to make, but don't have those hordes of money, suddenly find that they don't have the operational machinery and the mechanisms in which to reach the grassroots. So they're shut out. So if you continue to shut these voices out, the only voices that you will hear are the voices of those who control the machinery. They have the radio stations, they have the party people downstairs, the motorcycles, the vehicles. They can have the posters, have rallies, and drown everybody out. And that is why we have to ask ourselves, is this the kind of democracy that we want? Is this the kind of democracy that inures to our development? And if not, nobody cast it in stone. We can stop and rethink and redefine it to suit ourselves and make sure we go back to consensus building. That is when you can build consensus on the national development plan and not have party manifestos determining the order of the day, causing interruptions in contracts, paying judgment debts, abandoning projects, and repeating it cycle after cycle. That is when you can have a sense of focus, continuity, and accumulation that one administration builds on what the other administration has built on. And we begin to make progress going forward. That is when you can have a sense of nationhood, a sense of patriotism, to which you can begin to educate a new generation of people so that they build this into their characters and it's imbued in them as they grow up. Those who had the opportunity to grow up during the early Nkrumah days. Yes, everybody condemned young pioneers, but look what young pioneers did for that generation. And it's time we thought about this again, because no nation can continue to build only on the bricks in the foundation. The bricks that will come in the superstructure, those that will hold the ceiling up, those are the bricks of the future.
Right. We will be hearing more from Dr. Sakkara once we correct that technical error. But Raymond Abloh is with us, well-known journalist and writer, often asking the question, what is wrong with us? Well, Mr. Abloh, according to the National Development Conference, there's a lot wrong with us, and there is a 10-point communique on how to fix it. How hopeful are you that there will be actual action following the talk? Raymond, I don't know if you can hear us. If you can unmute your microphone. It seems that our signal to Mr. Abloh is not very strong, so we're working on that. We apologize. We do have Dr. Foster with us still, and I suppose, Doc, we could deal with the same question. The talk is now done. It's time for action. There's a 10-point communique. How hopeful are you that there will be actual action following this? Right, okay, we're working to reconnect with our two guests so that we can hear their views quite clearly on this topic, this all-important topic. Okay, so Mr. Abloh, can you hear me? Do we have Mr. Raymond Abloh on the line? Okay. Dr. Foster, the question is the same. Same thing I wanted to ask Raymond. Do you have any hope, any faith that this communique will lead to actual action? Okay, we're going to take a few messages. When we come back, we will resolve this matter and hear from our guests on it. Agreed points. We're discussing this with our two guests, Professor Abu Sakkara Foster, former presidential candidate for the CPP, and Raymond Abloh, communication specialist and journalist. Mr. Abloh, I'm hoping you can hear me this time because I'm keen to hear your answer to this question about whether indeed we can expect this 10-point communique to actually be implemented. Will there be action after the talk?
That's a very important question. Thank you very much. Let me say before that I commend the Pentecost Church for this particular effort. But as to whether the communique can be implemented, one cannot tell because we've had several things done this way and nothing seems to be working. First and foremost, I don't want to believe that we don't have a national vision. We already have we don't have a vision in terms of moral vision. We have a moral vision as a country already. But the question is, what is that vision, and then why are we not able to attain that vision? If you look at our national anthem, and then you look at the pledge, you realize that we have a national vision, a moral vision as a nation. The values that define the moral vision are what are in the pledge and the national anthem. That we need to be selfless, we need to be loyal to our country, faithful to our country, render service, discipline. All these things are in it there. And do we need a communique to go establish a body somewhere to appreciate these values which are there? No, we don't. Like Dr. Sakara said, in the First Republic, when Nkrumah established the young pioneers, fine, we may have issues with Nkrumah and his not young pioneers, but the values Nkrumah established are the very values which are in the pledge and the national anthem. Now, John Kufuor came up with the national orientation, and the national orientation contains the same values which Nkrumah picked for the young pioneers, which are in the national anthem and national pledge. The question is this: if we all agree that the national moral vision that we have are supposed to be defined by loyalty to the nation, selflessness to the nation, with service to the nation, faithfulness, discipline. If we all agree, the question is, why is it that we have not been able to attain it? And what is made it difficult for us to attain it? How have we dealt with it to be sure that these 10-point communique will be effectively implemented to achieve what we could have achieved if we just worked on what we already have? That is what is the most important question. And here, let me state emphatically that even though we have a vision, we have a moral vision as a country, what we lack is a leadership. The leadership to ensure that that vision is attained. We don't have that leadership. When I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about just political leadership. I'm talking about leadership at all levels. When you look at our traditional leadership, look at the religious leadership, you look at the political leadership, and you look at the business leadership, the academia. When you look at our leadership, we don't have that leadership that is committed to ensuring that the moral vision of this nation is achieved. None of our leaders from all across board, none of them has demonstrated the needed capacity to ensure that the vision, as in our moral vision, is achieved. None of them, none can come up and say that they have demonstrated an embodiment of the values of selflessness, the value of loyalty to these states and the country, the value of discipline and power, integrity. They have not demonstrated it. And what is more painful, or what is even more serious, is that the institutions which are supposed to even lead in defining the values and the moral vision of this nation, the institutions themselves need help. They themselves need to be saved. Because the major institutions are the traditional chieftaincy institution and the religious institutions. Now tell me, we all know that these leaders are members of churches and mosques. These leaders we have are members of the churches and the mosques. The businesses that are caught in scandals, the owners of those businesses, many of them are members of the churches and the mosque, and they are members, some of them are even elders in churches. So if the church themselves cannot ensure that their members are living the Christ-like life of the values which we have in the national anthem and the national pledge, how sure are we that establishing a committee somewhere or establishing a body called integrity body it will be capable of doing it? These churches are there. Even when you look at the leadership of the churches, the religious bodies, if you look at them critically, and then you look at their actions and their inactions, you will come to understand why the moral value of this nation we've been talking about all these years, we are unable to attain it. They themselves don't have the embodiment of the values. Look at the National Cathedral, for instance. We have a National Cathedral which is being established on foundations of lies and inconsistencies. Now, the members who are the members of the trustees, they are members of the church, they are elders, they are bishops, they are archbishops. Reverend Kusi Boateng, who is also known as Kwabena Dujemfi, is a church leader and is part of those who are supposed to help in shaping the values of this country in terms of the moral values, the moral values and the moral vision of this country. They are supposed to even help the politicians and the other members who are in other areas to be able to move according to the plans that may have been set. to ensure the attainment of the moral vision of the country. And here they are on the corridors of power, seeking to unite with the politicians, the corrupt politicians, instead of uniting with divinity and ensuring that the values which we are supposed to see, the values which we are supposed to inculcate in the institutions, in our children, are done. They are not doing it. They are competing rather on the corridors of power and fighting among themselves as to who is clever or who is more closer to who in the arena of power. So you see that religious institutions themselves have failed themselves, and they have failed the entire nation. The chiefs have failed us too, because they are the custodians of our values. Today we are talking about LGBTQ, and we have to ensure that we go by what? Our sexual orientation, whatever thing. But the question is, the values that we are supposed to show to of integrity, are they not part of our values? We are so corrupt that even we know the chiefs and those people who are supposed to ensure that there's no galamsey, they are part of it all. So forming a group or having an association or forming a body and calling it integrity, whatever, and that they are going to ensure we communicate. We need leadership that is the embodiment of the values that define our moral vision as a country. The leadership that is committed to ensuring that these values are very well inculcated in the institutions, their appointees, and in the citizenry at large. We need leaders who will not tell us to fix ourselves when they themselves are not fixed, but they will fix themselves and exhibit the character and attitude that will help us to fix ourselves. So this is where we are. We've got to a point where there is nothing like good and bad in this country anymore. Good and bad is dependent on who is in government and who is your friend. And in such a situation, we are acting as if now we need 10-point communique to determine or to define what our value or our what we are now calling our moral vision. But we already have a moral vision. We already have a moral vision. We all know it, but we are not working according to it because we are now thinking more about ourselves. Today, even though the pledge and the national anthem advises or urges us to be to be honest. If you are honest in this country, you are in trouble. In other fact, to be fearlessly honest in this country is a sign that you must be dealt with. The people who are honest are dealt with. That is how come Domelevu was dealt with.
Simon, if I may ask you, I mean, is it not fair to say that anything that is repeated, that we are constantly exposed to, becomes a part of us? So if indeed we are recognizing a moral deficit, is it a bad plan to actually implement programs that will inculcate the ideas, blast it over our media, and ensure that things that we should already know become more accessible and more commonplace to us?
We don't need to establish any new.
Let us take this.
We don't need to establish any new organization or even do any new 10-point communique. We already know what we need. We have a body that is established there, that is being paid. People are being paid to provide education, civic education in this country. We have a body that is paid. People are paid every time to ensure. So what are they going to do differently that the civic education body, when resource cannot do it? Well, what are they going to do? That when the civic education body is resourced, they cannot do.
Let me bring in Dr. Sakara Foster. Now, Doc, I want to ask you a specific question. Let me ask the question, and then once you've answered it, you can add your point as well. So one of the items on the communique is the establishment of a National Moral and Integrity Council, NMIC, they've given it an abbreviation already, with the stature like that of the Peace Council to begin a process of restoration of generations of decay and moral decadence that Ghana has experienced over the years. Now, my question is, they are seeking to create something along the lines of the Peace Council. Bearing in mind that in spite of the existence of the Peace Council, Ghana has been falling steadily on the Global Peace Index. Have they got the right idea, trying to set up another institution?
First of all, let me take one step back before I answer that question. My young son Raymond has been very passionate in speaking to the issue, but let us take this as a cry for help. Let's not take this as what do you call it? A blanket solution to the entire problem. Let's take it as a realization and a cry for help that if nothing is done, things will get even worse than they are now. If we take it as such, then the next step is to ask the question that you are asking now. Are these institutional mechanisms that we're putting up, are they the right ones to solve that? Then we have to look at what is already there. As you mentioned, you have the Peace Council, but even more importantly, you have Shiraj, and it has now got prosecutory powers where certain things are reported to it, it can go after it. You have the Office of the Special Prosecutor, but then again, what is the problem underpinning the inability of these existing institutions to work effectively? And it comes back to the independence of constitutional bodies that are supposed to be independent bodies. The fact that they are appointed by the president, the fact that they work under the purview of the existing incumbent government, the fact that they decide what is prosecuted and what is not prosecuted. These are legislative issues in our constitution where we need to put in corrective measures to curb the excesses and abuse of power so that it manifests itself in this way. No amount of praying elsewhere and moral committees will do what legislation itself should do. And that is what we need to be very clear about. The Moral Council, the Integrity Council will seek to highlight these things and put them in our curriculum and try and promote them in a way which counters the massive information inflow that is coming in through internet and phones, etc., and taking the minds of our children elsewhere. We need something that will counterbalance them. But at the bottom line is that the main volcano, which is fomenting all of these things, comes from our partisan political system, which dominates what should be the national interest. And until we redefine that democracy for ourselves and put it in check, and make sure that the excesses at the presidency are put in check, the balance of power between institutions are put in check, the freedom to appoint people all over the place are put in check. You can do all the things you're talking about. Until you check those things, what we see will continue to happen, because what is happening now are overgrown partisan interests which are now manifesting themselves on the national scene to dictate the course of events, irrespective of what the Constitution says, irrespective of what the institutions have been put in place are supposed to do, irrespective of the independence of independent constitutional bodies. So this is the issue. We have to be very clear in our minds to separate moral issues away from legislative issues that we can legislate against. There are certain principles embedded in our constitution that give force to laws for us to legislate, to reflect our value system. But morality per se, we cannot legislate against it, and therefore we cannot enforce it, because we're not a theocracy, we're a democracy. In a theocracy, you can do that. If we live in a Sharia law country and somebody wears their skirt too short, you can call them and whip them and put a cloth over them. Not that that is right, but that is what that kind of system allows you to do. But in a democracy as we have it now, it's a laid down procedure by which government is supposed to pursue the welfare and common good of all of us. But it has found that the lion called partisanship has devoured its interests and is now pursuing the interests of a few. And more importantly, it is even corrupting the very institutions themselves in order that it can do that. If we don't recognize that, we will never be able to solve the problem. And I always put it in very simple terms for everybody to understand. If you're locked in a room and there's a badly behaved dog there and you have a stick, you can control it. But if suddenly they let a lion in that room, that stick is going to be useless. And that is what partisanship has become. It has become something that has eaten all the check systems against the judiciary, against the legislator. It has consumed all their independence and swallowed it in itself. And now, whatever it dictates is what goes on. And this is what we must seek to correct, and that is not a substitute. Talking about morality is not a substitute for that correction.
Help, though. Will talking about morality help?
Oh, of course. I have said that, we have an influx of information now. Every child has access to whatever is going on in the internet around the world. And those things influence that child more than what they are taught in school and more than what they are taught in their families. So if we don't up our game in what that child hears in school and in our families, then of course, what they hear through their phone is going to be what dictates their behavior and modifies their behavior. So it is actually a good thing, but it is a good thing for the purpose of what it can achieve within its mandate. And there I feel that, yes, if that is what it's going to do, that commission is going to look at how we make these things, the values and morals, more important in the curriculum and heighten them and have side programs where people can be participating in activities and youth can go on holiday camps. And in fact, I have often said myself, one of the most important medicines also is to have a compulsory military service for people between the ages of 18 and 27. And that will also instill discipline in them as well. We will not have a situation where, the trainees will tell the commanders that this exercise is too difficult. Please, let's do an easier one. That will no can do. As JJ will say, who born dog? Hey, you're going to do that exercise, So we have to, be able to put these things in their right boxes. And I think that what is being proposed now is important in the context of infusing the society with a sense of what is right, what is good, what we all accept as common shared values, and then finding mechanisms where we can promote them in our society. Because every day in the phones that these children are holding, somebody is promoting some other agenda elsewhere, and we have to counter that.
All right.
But that is not the same thing as talking about the things we need to legislate and curb the excesses so that the demon that we have created in our partisan democracy, which has subsumed our national interests, does not take hold and tear apart even the very laws that are supposed to run the country.
Right. Okay, I want to give the last couple of minutes to Raymond Abloh, and I suppose the question here is this. Looking through this communique, who do you identify as the members of our well-intending society who are tasked with implementing these 10 points?
First, let me emphasize the point that we don't need any new group of people, organization, institution to implement or execute whichever point we have put down. We don't. We like a situation, we keep establishing institutions and then duplicating them and giving them different names, and we don't get anything from them. And for a very long time, we are wasting resources in doing this. What is the job of the Council of State? What are they supposed to do? And what is the benefit we are getting from them? As a Council of State, members are being paid with a lot of resources. But can we say for a fact that the Council of State is making any relevant contribution to decisions taken by the executive, and they are helping the executive to be able to come up with the moral values and push society the way we need to do? We have a Council of State there. We don't even know what we are doing with them. The Council of State is there, and all the mess we are seeing, all the moral degradation we are seeing is taking place. But these are men who are old men and old women who have so much experience, who are supposed to counsel the president and in counsel parliament and help us to be able to move in the right direction as a nation. We have the NCCE there, which are supposed to be resourced. So why are we asking ourselves that we need to establish a body to implement the communique, giving it a name integrity? That's not changed anything. Right. We have the institutions there which need to be effectively and sufficiently resourced to be able to do their jobs. We know what is right. We are not doing it. For instance, if an organization is forced, is a new organization we are going to form, going to instill discipline in the president, better than the Council of States is doing or is unable to do? What new thing is that organization coming with? How differently is it going to execute these things? How differently? Look, we've been at this place for so long a time. So many young people have become so frustrated, they don't have hope in our leadership anymore. What we need is generational and transformational leaders. Look, all the things you're talking about, Dr. Sakara is talking about the loopholes in the Constitution. It is true that we need to tighten the Constitution or make it such that unscrupulous people will not take advantage of it when they have entrance to power. But at the same time, if the churches don't need us to establish that organization for them to be able to do their job well. The churches themselves, the leaders, the Christian leaders in this country, the religious leaders in this country themselves, they are not exhibiting the values they are talking about. So is a new integrity organization going to help them to do it in their churches? Is the new organization going to force Kusi Watin to resign?
Yeah, it's a point well made, and I appreciate it.
What are we talking about?
Indeed. I want to say a big thank you to Raymond Ablo, a journalist and a social commentator, as well as Dr. Abu Sakara. And we appreciate your time, both of you. Okay, well, there's still more to talk about, including indiscipline in our schools. Let's tackle that after these messages. You're welcome back. Now, Kweku House students at Adisado College were at the heart of the violence captured in a viral video, and they have committed to be of good behavior following nationwide backlash over their misconduct. Now, that's according to Deputy Education Minister Reverend John Intim-Fojo, who has been speaking to the students today. Now, in the viral video, a student, a bigger student, was seen holding a smaller one in a chokehold and then banging his head against a metal bed frame in a dormitory at Kweku House. Now, investigations are underway while the culprit seen in the video has been arrested by the police. But the big question now is, why are we seeing this level of indiscipline in our schools, and how do we address it? Dr. Peter Enti is education economist, researcher, data analyst, and curriculum expert. He joins us right now via Zoom. Dr. Enti, it's a pleasure to speak to you. Now, first of all, let's establish the facts. Is this thing on an increase? Is it happening more now than it used to? Or are we just seeing more of it thanks to good old social media?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think we are seeing more of it than it used to because of social media. Of course, in those days, we used to hear some of these things happening in schools, but because of now social media, these things easily get to the forefront and goes viral. So for me, I have not done any research in recent times to ascertain whether the indiscipline in school is escalating or not. But I think it's because of the social media. That is why we are seeing more of this now.
Now, the truth is that most people believe that young people of today just have a less developed sense of consequence. What is your assessment of this in your research? Do you find that perhaps the mindset of young people today seems to be a lot more carefree than their predecessors?
I think that the system that we are building seems to give a certain level of freedom to young people as compared to those days. The spirits, the communal spirits that used to engulf the development of the child. During those periods, what used to happen is that the child begins his socialization process from the house and then is handed over to the school system, and society collectively helps to mold the child. In recent times, most of our families are not able to have time for their children. So the child socialization process sometimes starts from the school. So you see that kids as early as 6 months, 1 year, are taken to school to begin their education. It means, therefore, that these children learn how to talk, how to walk, how to do most of the basic things that they would have learned in the house, including the aspect of respect, discipline, civility, and all those things from the school, rather than from the house and from the community. And now from the social media, of course. So these are the things that are molding the behavior of our children in recent times. And if you are not careful, the family system and the communal system, which has broken down, if you are not careful, would lead to, or is leading to, the caliber of youth that we are seeing today.
So the government is seeking to implement certain solutions. We've already heard that since the month of May, Ghana Education Service has been implementing this Dean of Discipline idea. How do you assess it? Do you think this is helpful?
I speak to a lot of teachers, and the teachers tells me that they are handicapped in terms of giving the requisite kind of discipline to students. They seem to suggest that the taking away of the corporal punishment and other mechanisms that used to be in the school system is showing that the teachers are handicapped and they are powerless, and therefore students have a leeway in the various things that they do. I don't know that the thinking and the research works that went into the Dean of Discipline that we want to institute in the school. I don't know whether the various portfolios on various school campuses, I mean, the assistant headmaster, there's one in charge of academics, there's one in charge of administration. There's also the senior housemaster. The senior housemaster is the one in charge of all the housemasters and, by extension, the various houses on campus. I don't know whether these people could not effectively and efficiently deliver in terms of ensuring discipline in the schools. That is why we want to bring out a Dean of Discipline. Again, there are counselors, or they are supposed to be counselors in our schools. These counselors are supposed to be the years and everything that the students want to talk about. I don't know whether we have assessed the effectiveness of our counseling system in our schools, that we think that all these mechanisms, all these systems that we have in place are not sufficient enough to deal with the issues of discipline on campus, that we need another portfolio to deal with that. I am indifferent in terms of this decision, but I think that a lot of thinking should have gone through this, and I don't foresee this particular portfolio coming to have a much impact on indiscipline in our schools. I don't foresee that unless we do other additional things that we need to do. We will not be getting any fruitful results from the Dean of Disciplines that we want to institute.
But so what should those other things be? What should we do if we actually want to see an improvement in levels of discipline?
One, I think that we need to go back and have a reorientation of our teachers in how to handle students when they exhibit signs of indiscipline. I feel that teachers are so much used to the corporal punishment that the taking away of the canes from them seems to suggest to them that they cannot do any other thing. I'm told and I'm aware that a lot of other disciplinary measures were introduced to the teachers. They find it ineffective. So the first thing that we need to do is to walk the teachers through these other forms of discipline that can be meted out to the students, including making sure that the student does not partake in certain things that makes him or her happy by having positive interaction with the student who undergoes these kind of discipline issues and all those things, that those positive measures that have been listed by Ghana Education Service. I think the teachers need to be reorientate themselves through these mechanisms. That is the first thing. The second is that we need to distinguish between school disciplinary issues and criminality. And this is very, very important. There are certain things that students do that borders on criminal records, and they should be dealt as such. Let me give you an example. We have heard of an instance that just happened in the northern part of the country where students attacked the housemaster.
The housemaster.
The housemaster. Good. There is also another incident, I think it's in Accra also, where students called people from outside to attack teachers in the school because of one or two issues. Then we have the Adisado issue. These issues are not school disciplinary issues. For me, these are criminal issues. So it is time that the school takes their hands off issues that are criminal and hand them over to the police. When we send these signals to the students, like we are doing with Adisco, students will now come to realize that some of these things that we do, if we do, we are not just going to be suspended. After all, after you suspend me, I'll still come and write my exams. We are not just going to be debordinized. You debordinize the student, he still comes to campus and they sneak and then sleep in the dormitory. But we are going to face the police and will be treated as criminals. Most of students would be deterred from undertaking some of the things that they do. So we have to distinguish between criminal activities and normal school disciplinary issues, like you don't go for dining hall, like you are shouting in class, like all those things are just normal school disciplinary issues that can be handled by the school. But when it borders on criminality, when students are issuing warning, beating teachers, harming teachers, and so on and so forth, school authorities should hand them over to the police. This is very important. Again, we need to go back to the time where there was constant interaction between the family, the students' parents, and that of the teachers. We know that PTA, there have been a lot of issues with PTA, but I think that we need to go back and find ways and means to keep the constant interaction between the parents and the teachers, so that the parents will be abreast on regular basis of behavior of their wards. Some of these children, their parents don't know what they are up to on campus. And sometimes when you tell them that this is what your ward has done, the parents will come and tell you that I don't believe it. So we need to establish that kind of relationship, make sure we strengthen it, so that every now and then, apart from sending normal academic reports to parents, we need to send behavior reports to parents.
Right.
These reports will give parents an idea of the character of their children on campus, and it will help them also contribute to their quota to help to reforming that particular child.
All right, now let's challenge the status quo for a minute. We're talking about the role the school has to play in instilling discipline.
Off the point for me.
Are you still with us, Dr. Enti? Do we still have Dr. Enti with us?
I'm here.
Okay, now, Doc, I'm saying let's challenge the status quo for a moment, okay? So we are talking about what the school needs to do to instill discipline. But the truth is, in that same school, there are thousands of students from different backgrounds. Some of them are doing the right thing, some of them are not. They are being taught by the same teachers. They are being managed by the same housemasters and the same headmaster. But some are doing the right thing, some are not. The difference between them is where they came from. So is there not more of a role for parents and families to play in instilling the discipline that we are lacking in schools today?
There is. You can never take away the family from the total makeup of the child in terms of his upbringing. And that is why I said earlier on that the socialization process, as we are taught in sociology, begins from the house. So parents have a role to play. Now, we also agree that some students or some people do not have the same behavior, the same character in the house and then out of the house. And that is why I've also indicated that interaction between the teacher and the parent is very crucial. But parents have a lot of work to do when it comes to their wards. Of course, they are the reason why we are moving up and down, working and getting the monies and other things. The children are the reason why we are doing all this. So in our attempt to also contribute a little to the development of the child, I think parents should make time for their wards. Parents should monitor the activities of their children, and parents should also constantly contact the teachers that teach their wards. Most parents do not do that. They only do that when, let's say, there's a problem or maybe there's an issue, but there should be constant interaction between the parent and the teacher. At least 1 or 2 teachers in the school, a parent should have their numbers and randomly call them to find out how the ward is doing. This one, you cannot do it with any form of legislation. It is a moral responsibility on the parents to ensure that this is done. But the problem is that some parents might not be able to do it. And that is why the system, the country, have 14 years of the child's life in school. 14 years of every young child's life in Ghana is spent in a school. 2 years at the kindergarten, 6 years at the primary school, 3 years at junior high school, and then 3 years at senior high school. 14 years. When you go to countries where they have been able to mold the behavior of their populace, they use their formal education system. And that is why sometimes some of us, we propose that we need to look at our educational system and use it to transform the child or the children that goes through it. Because it is the education that, the formal education that the child is exposed to. And when he goes there, there are things that the child is taught. The teacher sometimes becomes the god of the child. And whatever the teacher says, the child listens, even sometimes more than what the parent is saying. So we need to go back. And of course, we are doing curriculum reforms and other things. We have to look at how we are doing all these things, building morals, values, principles, practices, and other things that we cherish as Ghanaians. Let's push these things into our curriculum and ensure that once the child moves from KG to class 1 to class 2 to GHS to SHS, the child is consciously and intentionally walk through these principles that will mold the child's behavior. I'm not saying this will transform every child, but at least we will be able to get about 90% of these children obeying or moving or being reformed in a way that the country wants the children to be.
Dr. Peter Enti, I want to say a big thank you to you for spending your afternoon with us. We appreciate your insights. Now let's stay with education. The Ghana Education Service is urging parents to take an interest in the early education of their children, as it is the foundation of a successful journey in their education. Now, at a stakeholder sensitization program for the Tashkent Declaration on Early Childhood Education, a director of pre-tertiary education at the Ministry of Education, Nana Bafo Iwa, underscored the importance of early education for children.
Tashkent Declaration is an agreement signed by countries in Tashkent, Pakistan, that allows guiding principles focused on equitable and inclusive quality of early childhood care and education services for children, education personnel, policy, governance and finance towards early childhood. The stakeholder meeting is aimed at sensitizing stakeholders in the childhood education space on how to achieve the targets set forth by the agreement. The Director of Pre-Tertiary Education at the Ministry of Education, Nabafwewa, urged parents to take an interest in the early education of their wards and also indicated the need for specialized teachers for early childhood education.
Many of the parents don't even know. They think that early childhood is not necessary, and for that matter, they prefer enrolling their children at the primary, lower primary. But you need to work on the early childhood child before you can move on to the primary, lower primary, as I used to say. To me, early childhood education opens the child up so that they will be, when they move to the primary, they will be ready for the mainstream education. And then we also need to train more special teachers for the early childhood.
The Director of Early Childhood Education at the Ghana Education Service, Vida Barbara Into, says it is very important that children's development are invested into to achieve the set target for 2030.
We are implementers, so we are implementing every bit of the policy that we've Ministry and GES have, and then also GES is in support with development partners and NGOs to develop activities, manuals for training teachers, going for monitoring, and then training the head teachers to mentor and then coach the teachers in the classroom. So we are doing a lot. Just that we need more supporters, more NGOs, more development partners to come and then support the early childhood education unit so that we can have it right.
Amasewa Nikwe is the Secretary General of the Ghana Commission of UNESCO, one of the organizing partners of the forum.
In Ghana, our education formally starts from 4 years, and so we have 2 years of pre-primary education. What happens to the child between 0 and 4 is largely the parents' responsibility, but a lot of the key social skills that we will require in life begin to be developed there, and so parents should also play their parts. You know the popular saying that it takes a village to raise a child. The entire society, some children are left with grandparents and aunties, etc., have a role to play. There are also creches, nursery schools, as it were, in the country, and we are working towards formalizing them, ensuring that the teachers are well trained, understand the area, the sector, and how to ensure that children receive the best education at the early childhood stage as possible.
The stakeholder conference was on the theme, The Ghana Story, Contextualizing Early Childhood Education, Tashkent Declaration and Commitment. Prince Kwame Kuduga's report read to you.
Now, the District Grandmaster of the District Grand Lodge of Ghana, Right Worshipful Isaac Owulaku Hood, has indicated that Masonry would continue to uplift lives across the globe through charity. Now, he said that charity forms part of their cardinal principles, hence their commitment to undertaking projects and programs aimed at making the world a better place. Now, he said this in a media encounter on the sidelines of the commissioning of an early years education center in Atoko, which was jointly financed by the Atoko Development Foundation and the Royal Masonic School for Girls in the UK.
The Atoko Early Years Education Center, equipped with the state-of-the-art learning and teaching materials, was designed to provide a solid foundation in education for children in the coastal community. The center comprises 4 classrooms, sanitary facilities, and a resource library. Provision of the center was made possible through a collaboration between the Atoko Development Fund and the Royal Masonic School for Girls in the United Kingdom. The Dufia of Atoko, Togbi Akume Geli Ajolulu III, who was the master planner of the project, described the facility as a legacy that would leave a lasting impact on the community.
I and the foundation are extremely concerned and disappointed with the continuous decline of the educational standard in Atoko, as mentioned by the head. With determined to address the decline, the foundation has decided to establish the Atoko Early Years Education Center, which is set up to be a well-resourced center to provide solid foundation in education to pre-children and children of school-going age in Atoko by providing effective educational, medical, and social support to the children. The medical support, which is provided by the ADF clinic and laboratory, will involve assessing, monitoring their medical, such as their immunization status, their sight, hearing, nutritional, dental, and carrying an assessment for any special educational needs. This is a real legacy project which will support and benefit generations and forever leave your footprints in Atoko.
A trustee of the Atoko, Adele Lee Rudok, said the outfit is working on a long-term plan to transform the center into a full-fledged school.
We have worked on development plans, short, medium and long term. We don't do anything like, oh, we make a decision today. Everything we do is by proper development plans so we can see where we're moving forward to. And this is the same. We're starting small. 15 children coming in to an environment where they've got teachers that fully understand how important early years is.
The District Grand Master of the District Grand Lodge of Ghana, Right Worship Isaac Owulaku Hood, who was there to support the Royal Masonic School for Girls established by the Freemason, underscored the gains of the center.
Charity be one of our cardinal principles. What we say, the distinguishing characteristics of our hearts. I'm so happy to be here today because I know of the impact it will have on the society at large. Looking at the medical facilities, the technical facilities, the ICT department, and of course the schools. You could imagine the impact it's having on society.
The provision of the center marked the beginning of a new era in education in the catchment area. The center, when fully developed, is expected to help produce the right human resources needed for the development of the community. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News, Atoko.
Yeah, just as it started to get good, our time is up, and that's just how it is. But you know we're not going to leave you empty-handed. We've got loads of stories for your enjoyment and entertainment and edification on myjoyonline.com. For example, Judge Kwesen is not treating the Supreme Court properly, according to the Chief Justice. Why does he say that? Well, there's one way to find out. Go to myjoyonline.com. Also, government to establish 50 community mining schemes by the end of 2023. And that's according to the Deputy Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Mriku Duka. That sounds like a promise to me. How do we feel about promises? Well, you can go share your views on myjoyonline.com. But of course, we're not going away with nothing. We're leaving you with LTS, all the stories from the world of showbiz, with a big feature coming up right now. My name is Kojo Yankson. It's been a pleasure. We're back tomorrow with more. Be good until then.